The silver starship glided through the silent void of space, a perfect blend of sleek Threxian engineering and advanced navigational systems. Alcun, a scout and scientist from the Threxian Collective, leaned forward in his command chair, his six-fingered hands dancing across the glowing controls. His mission was simple on paper but daunting in reality: investigate a newly discovered planet at the edge of a distant solar system and determine its potential for future study. The planet had an official designation of DX-337, but the Threxian records had given it another, more foreboding name, Earth. It was categorized as a Class 9 Deathworld, a title reserved for planets with extreme conditions that made them uninhabitable or, at the very least, dangerous to advanced species. Earth, however, was different. It wasn't just dangerous, it was teeming with life, including a dominant species that had somehow managed to thrive in a hostile environment. These creatures, known as humans, defied everything the Threxian scientists thought they knew about survival. Alcun's bright, violet eyes widened as the planet filled the view from his cockpit. Blue oceans, swirling white clouds, and stretches of green landmass stretched out beneath him. From space, it looked serene, beautiful, even. But Alcun knew better. He had studied Earth's file meticulously before embarking on this mission. Massive storms, earthquakes, extreme temperature fluctuations, and an ecosystem filled with carnivorous predators made it one of the most perilous worlds in the known galaxy. Systems check, Alcun muttered to himself, his voice calm but focused. He tapped the ship's AI interface, pulling up real-time data about Earth's atmosphere and surface conditions. It was worse than he anticipated. Not only did the planet have highly active tectonic plates, but the atmosphere was also riddled with pollutants, unpredictable storms, and oxygen levels that were dangerously high for his species. His Threxian lungs, designed for the thinner, nitrogen-rich atmosphere of his homeworld, would struggle in such an environment. Still, he pressed forward. He hadn't come this far to turn back now. Beginning descent, he said aloud, his voice echoing softly in the confines of the cockpit. The ship's thrusters activated as it dipped into Earth's atmosphere, the hull trembling as it encountered resistance. Thick, swirling clouds engulfed the craft as it pierced through the atmosphere, and the once placid view turned into a violent display of turbulence. The gentle hum of the engines was drowned out by the roar of atmospheric friction. Alcun's ship was built to withstand high-pressure environments, but Earth's atmosphere was particularly turbulent. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the dark clouds that seemed to wrap around his ship like claws. Then the alarms began blaring. Warning, extreme weather conditions detected. Thruster control unstable, the AI's calm, robotic voice announced. Alcun's heart raced as he scanned the readings. The storm was worse than he had predicted. Massive wind gusts ripped through the atmosphere, buffeting the ship. Thunder boomed all around him, and the electrical storm seemed to grow stronger with every passing second. Recalibrating. Stabilizing. Alcun muttered, his hands flying over the controls as he attempted to override the automated systems. But the storm was too fierce. A sudden crack jolted the ship as one of the external thrusters failed. Alcun's stomach lurched as the craft spun out of control, plummeting through the dense clouds toward the surface of Earth. The force of the spin pinned him against his seat, his slender body struggling under the sudden increase in gravitational pull. Warning lights flickered across the control panel, and the AI's voice grew more insistent. Emergency procedures initiated. Brace for impact. Alcun barely had time to react before the ship crashed through the upper canopy of a dense forest. Trees shattered like toothpicks as the vessel tore through them, the sound of metal scraping against nature filled the air. With a bone-jarring thud, the ship slammed into the ground, skidding across the forest floor before coming to a violent stop against a massive rock formation. For a moment, everything was still. Alcun opened his eyes, blinking against the haze of smoke and sparks that filled the cockpit. The ship's internal systems were failing, but at least he was alive. He tried to move, but pain shot through his limbs. His body was weak, not built for such high-gravity environments. The very air felt oppressive in his lungs, every breath a struggle. The oxygen levels were far higher than what he was used to, making his head spin. He groaned as he unbuckled himself from the seat and stumbled toward the hatch. His wrist-mounted scanner beeped furiously, warning him of high temperatures and dangerous biological activity outside. But staying in the ship wasn't an option. It could ignite any moment from the damage. With a final heave, he forced open the emergency hatch and stepped outside. The jungle that greeted him was like nothing he had ever seen before. Towering trees loomed overhead, their massive branches blocking out much of the sunlight. The air was thick with humidity, and strange, alien sounds echoed all around him. The ground beneath his feet was soft, covered in layers of decaying plant matter, and the scent of damp earth and unfamiliar flora overwhelmed his senses. Alcun took a cautious step forward, his limbs heavy and uncoordinated in Earth's gravity. Every movement required twice the effort it would have on his homeworld. His chest tightened as he struggled to take in the dense, oxygen-rich air. Sweat already beaded on his pale skin, his Threxian physiology ill-suited for the tropical heat that enveloped him. Suddenly, there was movement in the underbrush. Alcun froze, his hand instinctively going to the small energy shield generator strapped to his belt. His eyes darted toward the sound, scanning the dense foliage. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at him from the darkness. Slowly, the creature emerged, a hulking beast with thick, mottled skin, sharp fangs, and claws that dug into the earth as it moved. It was like something out of a nightmare, a predator perfectly evolved to dominate this environment. The creature growled low, its eyes locked on Alcun. It was massive, easily twice his size, and radiated raw power. This was one of Earth's apex predators, a beast that had adapted to the planet's lethal ecosystem. Alcun activated his shield just as the creature lunged. Its speed was astonishing, despite its bulk. The shield flared to life in a burst of energy, forming a shimmering barrier around Alcun, but the creature hit it with such force that the impact sent him sprawling backward. He barely had time to scramble to his feet before the creature struck again, its claws swiping at the shield, sending sparks flying. The shield wouldn't hold for long. Alcun knew that much. His technology was advanced, but it wasn't designed for sustained assaults from such primal forces. With no other option, he turned and ran. His body screamed in protest as he bolted through the jungle, his feet sinking into the soft ground with each step. The creature roared behind him, giving chase with terrifying speed. Branches whipped at Alcun's face as he pushed forward, his vision swimming as the high oxygen levels and intense gravity took their toll. He wasn't going to survive long on this planet. The realization hit him as he stumbled over a root, crashing to the ground. His shield flickered and died, the last of its energy depleted. He lay there, panting, his heart racing as the predator closed in. This was it. He had landed on a Deathworld, and now it would claim him as its latest victim. The creature loomed over him, its jaws wide, ready to strike. And then out of nowhere there was a loud bang. The predator recoiled, snarling in pain as something struck its side. Alcun's blurry vision caught the sight of a figure emerging from the trees, wielding a strange, black weapon that emitted another deafening crack. The predator let out a final roar before retreating into the jungle, disappearing into the shadows. The figure approached Alcun, standing over him with a look of both awe and suspicion. It was a human, a female, her eyes sharp and calculating as she regarded the strange alien at her feet. Alcun's breath hitched in his chest as he struggled to speak, his voice barely a whisper. I come in peace." The human said nothing, only tightening her grip on the weapon as she looked down at him with unreadable eyes. Alcun's journey had just begun, but he realized now how woefully unprepared he was for this planet, this death world called Earth. Alcun's vision flickered as he lay on the soft jungle floor, struggling to maintain consciousness. The towering trees above him swayed gently in the humid breeze, their dense canopies obscuring the sunlight. Everything felt surreal, like he was caught between worlds, his peaceful home planet and this violent, living nightmare. The last thing he remembered was the crack of the human's weapon, the predator retreating into the shadows, and then darkness overtook him. When he awoke again, it was to the low hum of voices, human voices, no doubt. His universal translator had barely processed enough of their language to make sense of the words, but he caught fragments as his mind slowly cleared. Alien. Dangerous? What if it's hostile? We can't just leave it out here. Look at it, barely alive. Alcon tried to lift his head, but his limbs felt as if they were made of lead. The gravity of Earth pulled him down relentlessly, his frail body still adapting to the crushing weight. His mouth was dry, and his throat ached, every breath feeling like inhaling fire in the thick, oxygen-rich air. Finally, his vision sharpened. He was no longer in the jungle, but inside some sort of structure. The walls were made of rough fabric, stretched over metal frames. A small camp, primitive by Threxian standards, but functional. The humans had brought him here after his collapse, and now they surrounded him, their curious eyes studying every inch of his alien body. There were 5 of them, dressed in rugged, dark clothing with tactical belts and strange instruments strapped to their bodies. They were clearly explorers, perhaps even soldiers hardened and efficient in their movements. One human stood out among them, her sharp features framed by wild black hair tied back in a rough knot. Her eyes were focused, calculating, and cautious. This was the human who had saved him from the predator in the jungle. She stepped forward, crouching next to Alcon with an air of authority, while the others watched from behind. "You're awake," she said in a voice that was steady but layered with suspicion. "Can you understand me?" Alcon's universal translator finally kicked in, converting her sounds into recognizable Threxian speech patterns. He nodded weakly, but speaking was still a struggle. His dry lips parted, and after a moment, he managed a few raspy words. "Yes. I understand." The woman raised an eyebrow but seemed unfazed by his broken, mechanical tone. She studied him for a moment, then looked back at her companions. "He can talk," she said, more to herself than the others. "All right, let's get some water. We don't know how long he's been out here." One of the other humans, a younger man with a kind face, hurried over with a small canister. He knelt beside Alcon and offered him the container. Alcon hesitated. He had no idea what this liquid was, but the desperate dryness in his throat drove him to trust these humans, at least for now. He reached for the canister, his slender fingers trembling as he brought it to his lips. The water was cool, but it burned as it went down, causing him to cough violently. The humans watched, their expressions a mixture of concern and fascination. Alcon composed himself and took another sip, this time more cautiously. The leader, the woman who had saved him, leaned in closer. "What are you doing here? Why did you come to Earth?" Alcon's mind raced. He had been briefed on human behavior dangerous, unpredictable, and prone to violence when threatened. But these humans had saved him. They were cautious, but not hostile. Yet, he needed to explain himself carefully, to avoid any misunderstanding. I am a scout," he said, his voice hoarse but regaining strength. "From the Threxian Collective. My mission was to observe your world. To understand how life survives here." One of the humans scoffed from the back of the group, a tall man with a scar running across his cheek. "Threxian Collective? What is that, some kind of alien empire?" Alcon shook his head slowly. "No, we are peaceful. Explorers. Scientists. We do not conquer." The woman held up a hand, silencing the man. She seemed more interested in Alcon's words than threatened by them. "You're here to study Earth?" Alcon nodded. "Yes. But this world. It's unlike anything I've encountered. Your environment, it's hostile. Your creatures, your storms. This is a Deathworld." The humans exchanged glances, some of them confused, others amused. The woman, however, was intrigued. She stood up and crossed her arms, her gaze not leaving Alcun. To you, maybe. But this is home for us. Earth may be dangerous, but we've adapted to it. It's not the first time we've heard someone call it a death world, though. Makes sense, given the stories we've gathered from other off-worlders. The term off-worlders struck Alcun. These humans had encountered others like him? His eyes widened with curiosity and surprise. You've met other species? The woman nodded. A few. Not many make it this far, and even fewer stay. You're right, Earth is a tough place for anyone not from here. But we've managed to survive, even thrive. Alcun looked around at the humans. Their confidence, their resilience in the face of such a dangerous planet, it was remarkable. He had read the reports, but seeing it firsthand was something else entirely. These humans weren't just surviving, they were flourishing in conditions that would kill most advanced species. What is your name? Alcun asked, his voice steadier now as he began to recover. The woman studied him for a moment before responding. Dr. Mariana Evans. I lead this team. We're part of a research expedition studying this region of the Amazon. Amazon? Alcun's translator struggled with the word, but he gathered it referred to the vast jungle that surrounded them. One of the largest rainforests on Earth, Mariana explained. Teeming with life. Dangerous life, too. You've already seen some of it. Alcun shuddered at the memory of the predator that had nearly killed him. He glanced down at his wrist scanner, which was still active but badly damaged from the crash. The readings were overwhelming. Earth's ecosystem was more complex and dangerous than he had imagined. I've never seen anything like it, Alcun admitted. The life here. It's constantly evolving, constantly adapting. It's as if the planet itself is alive. Mariana smirked. That's not far from the truth. Earth is a place where you either adapt or you die. It's been like that for billions of years, and we've been part of that evolution. Alcun stared at her in awe. These humans, these fragile-looking creatures, had evolved on a world where the very air was toxic to him, where predators lurked in every corner, and where natural disasters were a constant threat. And yet, they had thrived. They had mastered their environment in ways Alcun's people couldn't comprehend. He had always believed the Threxians were the pinnacle of peaceful, advanced civilization, but Earth had forged something far more formidable in its crucible of violence. Alcun took a deep breath, the weight of Earth's atmosphere pressing down on him. Your species. You are remarkable. To survive here, on a world like this. It's beyond anything I've ever studied. Mariana's expression softened. We've had millions of years to get used to it. But it's not all bad, you know. For us, Earth isn't just a death world. It's paradise. Alcun blinked, confused by her words. Paradise? How can you call this place paradise? It's lethal. Mariana's lips curled into a small smile. It's lethal to you. But to us, it's home. The storms, the predators, the danger, they're all part of what makes Earth what it is. A world full of life. You might see it as hell, but we see it as a challenge. And we've learned to rise to that challenge. Alcun was silent for a moment, processing her words. He had never thought of it that way. To him, Earth was a death world, a place where every element of nature seemed to conspire against survival. But to the humans, it was the opposite. They had adapted to the chaos, thrived in it, even taken pride in their ability to overcome the odds. But he also knew he wasn't like them. This planet was killing him, slowly but surely. His body was weakening under the constant pressure, and despite the humans' help, he could feel the toll it was taking. Thank you, Alcun said softly. For saving me. Mariana nodded. We're not monsters, no matter what your people might think. But you'll need to recover before we can figure out what to do next. Alcon closed his eyes, exhausted, but his mind was racing. He had come to Earth to observe, to study, but now he found himself at the mercy of the planet's apex species, a species that viewed their lethal home as paradise. As sleep overtook him, one thought dominated his mind: how could something so deadly be paradise for anyone? Alcon's recovery was slow. Earth's gravity and atmosphere, while survivable for short periods, continued to strain his body. Even with the human's help, every breath felt like inhaling fire, and his limbs ached constantly under the relentless pull of the planet's gravity. However, the humans had proven remarkably resourceful in keeping him alive, fascinatingly resourceful, in fact. They provided him with water, food, and shelter, seemingly unconcerned about the dangers that lurked just outside their camp. It was several days before Alcon could even walk without assistance, but he insisted on accompanying the humans on one of their expeditions. His scientific curiosity had gotten the better of him, and though his body was weak, his mind was sharp. He needed to see more of Earth, to understand how this world operated. How could life flourish in such a hostile environment? How could the humans so seemingly fragile stand at the top of this world's food chain? The humans were cautious at first, uncertain about taking him out into the field so soon, but Dr. Mariana Evans eventually agreed. She had become fascinated with Alcon, seeing him as both a scientific anomaly and a window into the broader universe. Alcon, in turn, saw Mariana as a puzzle, a representative of a species that defied everything he had thought possible about survival. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Mariana asked as she helped Alcon strap on a lightweight backpack filled with basic survival gear: water, a flare, and an emergency radio. The humans had no advanced energy shields or protective suits like Alcon's people, yet they ventured into the jungle with little more than simple tools and sheer confidence. It was unnerving to him. "I'll manage," Alcon replied, though the strain in his voice was evident. The team set out at dawn, moving deeper into the Amazon rainforest, their boots crunching against the damp undergrowth. The air was thick with humidity, and the buzzing of insects filled the air. Alcon's sensors pinged constantly, warning him of the high concentration of microorganisms and airborne particles. It was a miracle these humans didn't suffer from constant illness, considering the environment. But as they trekked deeper into the jungle, Alcon noticed something strange. The humans didn't just survive in this environment, they thrived. They moved through the dense foliage with a practiced ease, seemingly unconcerned by the dangers that lurked around every corner. They pointed out dangerous plants, venomous creatures, and even identified subtle changes in the weather that signaled approaching storms. Mariana, in particular, seemed to have an instinctual understanding of the jungle, her sharp eyes scanning the landscape as she led the group. "Watch your step here," she said at one point, holding out a hand to stop Alcon. "There's a patch of Monstera venomata. Those leaves release a toxin that can cause paralysis." Alcon's eyes widened as he looked at the plant. His wrist scanner confirmed Mariana's warning. The plant was indeed lethal, capable of rendering a Threxian unconscious within minutes. And yet, the humans navigated around it effortlessly, their casual demeanor implying this was just another day in the jungle. As they continued, Mariana slowed her pace, allowing Alcon to catch up. She studied him for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said. About Earth being a death world." "It is," Alcon replied, his voice strained from the exertion of walking. "By any metric used by the Threxian Collective, your planet is classified as one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, and biological hazards. It's a miracle anything survives here." Mariana chuckled softly. "It's funny. To us, it's just home. We don't think of it as hostile. Sure, it can be dangerous, but we've adapted to it. And it's not all bad. The biodiversity here is unmatched. We have millions of species, some we haven't even discovered yet. For every danger, there's something beautiful." Alcon remained silent, trying to reconcile her words with what he had observed. Beauty was a relative concept, he supposed, but to him, Earth was nothing short of a nightmare. They soon reached a clearing where the humans began setting up a small camp. Alcuin's sensors alerted him to increased electromagnetic activity in the area, and he noticed Mariana was looking at something just beyond the tree line. "What are you scanning for?" Alcuin asked, curious. Mariana didn't answer immediately. She motioned for her team to spread out and start taking readings. After a few moments, she turned to Alcuin, her expression unreadable. "There's something here," she said, her voice low. "Something we've been tracking for months. A pattern of electromagnetic anomaly, strange signals that we can't explain. They don't match any natural phenomenon we know of." Alcuin's interest peaked. "You think it's extraterrestrial?" Mariana hesitated before nodding. "It's possible. We've had rumors for years, stories about strange things in the jungle, lights, sounds, objects moving in ways that defy physics. My team is here to study these anomalies, but so far, we haven't found any solid evidence. Just whispers." Alcuin activated his wrist scanner, adjusting its frequency to match the electromagnetic spectrum. Almost immediately, he picked up something, a faint, pulsing signal, unlike anything he had encountered before. The readings were erratic, fluctuating between wavelengths, but there was something unmistakably artificial about it. This is not natural," Alcuin muttered, his eyes widening as the data streamed across his display. Mariana glanced at him. "That's what we've been thinking. We've mapped these anomalies across several regions, but they always seem to move. Almost like they're avoiding us." Alcuin's mind raced. Could there be another alien presence on Earth? Perhaps a species even the humans were unaware of? Or worse, some ancient, dormant technology buried beneath the surface of this death world? "I need to investigate further," Alcuin said, his scientific curiosity overcoming his physical exhaustion. Mariana smiled faintly. "I thought you might say that. But be careful. This jungle has a way of surprising you." As they moved deeper into the anomaly's range, the jungle seemed to shift around them. The usual sounds of wildlife grew quieter, and the air grew thick with tension. Alcuin's sensors continued to track the signal, but it was erratic, constantly shifting, as if something was deliberately trying to hide its presence. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble passing through the earth. Alcuin froze, his heart pounding. His wrist scanner beeped furiously as the signal spiked, surging with energy. "Get back!" Mariana shouted, pulling Alcuin to the side just as a massive root shot up from the ground, nearly knocking them off their feet. Alcuin stumbled, barely catching himself on a tree trunk. The jungle was alive, responding to the disturbance in the electromagnetic field. Vines writhed, trees creaked, and the earth itself seemed to shift beneath them. "Stay close!" Mariana yelled as her team regrouped. "This isn't normal." Alcuin's mind raced. The anomalies, the sudden surge of energy, something ancient and powerful was at play here. He adjusted his scanner, fine-tuning its sensitivity, and finally, the source of the signal became clear. "There," he shouted, pointing toward a massive stone structure half hidden by the jungle. The team turned, their eyes widening at the sight. It was a ruin, ancient and overgrown with vines, but clearly not of human origin. Strange symbols adorned the stone, glowing faintly with a light that pulsed in time with the electromagnetic signal. Mariana stepped forward cautiously. "This wasn't on any of our maps. How did we miss it?" Alcuin's heart raced as they approached the structure. His wrist scanner buzzed with activity, confirming what he had suspected. This ruin was not from Earth. The technology embedded in the stone was alien, far older than anything he had ever encountered, perhaps even predating Threxian civilization. "We need to be careful," Alcuin said, his voice tense. "This place. It's dangerous." Mariana nodded, her eyes scanning the ruins. "We've been tracking these anomalies for months, and now we find this. Whatever it is, it's been here a long time." Alcuin's hands trembled as he reached out to touch the stone, the symbols glowing brighter at his touch. The energy pulsed through his body, and for a moment, he saw visions flashes of light, of beings not unlike the Threxians, but taller, more ancient, their faces obscured by veils of energy. They had built this structure, perhaps as a warning, or perhaps as a prison. He pulled his hand back, his heart pounding in his chest. This technology. It's alien. Far older than anything we've seen. Mariana's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Alcuin hesitated. I'm not sure yet, but we need to leave. Now. Whatever is here, it's not dormant anymore. As the jungle shifted around them, the team began to retreat, but the electromagnetic energy grew stronger. The anomaly pulsed once more, shaking the ground, and Alcuin realized too late that they had awakened something. A low growl echoed from the ruins, and Mariana's eyes widened. Move, she shouted, pulling Alcuin back as a massive shadow emerged from the entrance of the ruin. It was a creature, ancient and terrible, unlike anything Alcuin had ever seen. Its body was made of shifting stone and energy, its eyes glowing with the same light that pulsed through the ruins. This was no ordinary predator. This was something far worse, something that had been lying in wait for centuries. Alcuin's heart raced as they fled through the jungle, the creature roaring behind them. The jungle itself seemed to conspire against them, the plants and trees moving in unnatural ways, slowing their escape. For the first time since arriving on Earth, Alcuin truly understood the planet's danger. This wasn't just a Deathworld, it was a place where ancient forces and life forms had been battling for dominance long before humans even existed. As they ran, the only thought in Alcuin's mind was a desperate one: how had the humans survived here for so long? The jungle was alive with chaos. Trees bent and swayed unnaturally as the ancient creature gave chase, its massive form crashing through the dense undergrowth like an unstoppable force. Alcuin could feel the pulse of electromagnetic energy radiating from the ruins behind him, growing stronger by the second. Whatever they had awakened, it was not just a predator, it was something primordial, an entity from a time before life as they knew it. And now it was coming for them. Alcuin's lungs burned as he sprinted through the jungle alongside Dr. Mariana Evans and her team. His frail body, not designed for Earth's crushing gravity and thick atmosphere, was reaching its limits. His legs felt like lead, and every breath felt like it was pulling razor blades into his chest. He knew he couldn't keep this pace for long, but stopping wasn't an option. Mariana glanced back at him, her face tense but focused. We need to get to higher ground. There's a cliff to the east. If we can make it, we might be able to lose it. Alcuin barely nodded, conserving his energy for running. The rest of the humans followed her lead, their movements fluid and practiced. They had lived with Earth's dangers for their entire lives, their instincts honed to survive in this hellish environment. Yet even they had never faced anything like this. Behind them, the creature's roars echoed through the jungle, a sound so deep it seemed to vibrate the very ground beneath their feet. Alcuin risked a glance over his shoulder and immediately regretted it. The creature was gaining on them, its form a shifting mass of stone, vines, and glowing energy. It was as though the jungle itself had given birth to the beast, and now it was reclaiming the land with terrifying force. The humans were fast, but Alcuin wasn't. He stumbled, nearly tripping over an exposed root. One of Mariana's team members, an older man named Carter, grabbed his arm, pulling him forward just before the creature's energy field surged past them, causing the air to crackle with electric tension. "Keep moving," Carter urged, his voice strained. The group pushed on, the terrain becoming steeper as they neared the cliff Mariana had mentioned. Alcuin's heart pounded in his chest. His wrist scanner, still tracking the electromagnetic anomaly, flashed warnings in rapid succession. The energy readings were off the charts. Whatever this creature was, it wasn't just a biological entity, it was tied to the very fabric of the planet's energy. They reached the cliff just as the creature crashed through the last of the trees, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Mariana skidded to a halt at the edge of the cliff, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she scanned the horizon for options. Below them, the land dropped sharply into a valley filled with thick fog and more jungle. There was no way down, at least not without falling to their deaths. "We're trapped," Carter muttered, his voice barely audible over the creature's approaching roars. Mariana gritted her teeth, her eyes darting between the cliff edge and the monster looming behind them. "We'll have to fight it," she said grimly, pulling a small device from her belt, a flare gun. It was primitive compared to the technology Alcune was used to, but in the hands of someone like Mariana, it might be enough to buy them time. Alcune's heart raced as he calculated their odds of survival. They were slim. His people, the Thryxians, had advanced defensive technologies, but even they would struggle against something like this. His energy shield had already been drained, and his other tools were useless against such a massive force. But then, a thought struck him, a desperate idea, but it was all he had. "This creature. It's tied to the anomaly, isn't it?" Alcune asked, his voice shaky but determined. Mariana frowned. "What do you mean?" "The energy field," he explained quickly, pointing to his wrist scanner. "It's emanating from the creature, but the source is back in the ruins. If we can disrupt the energy flow, we might be able to weaken it, maybe even stop it." Mariana's eyes flicked to the scanner, then back to the creature, which was now mere meters away, its massive form looming over them. "You think it's connected to that ruin? Like some kind of guardian?" "More like a sentry," Alcune corrected. "It's defending the site, but it can't exist without the power source." She hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "All right. How do we cut off the power?" Alcune's mind raced. "I need to get closer to the ruins, to the core of the anomaly. I can disrupt it with my equipment, but I'll need time." Mariana's face hardened. "You'll have your time." Before Alcune could protest, Mariana raised the flare gun and fired directly at the creature's face. The flare exploded in a burst of light and smoke, temporarily blinding the beast. It roared in anger, thrashing its massive arms wildly, but Mariana didn't flinch. "Go," she shouted at Alcune. "We'll hold it off as long as we can." Alcune didn't need to be told twice. He turned and bolted back toward the jungle, his legs screaming in protest as he raced down the incline. He could hear the humans behind him, firing their weapons, shouting, distracting the creature as best they could. The ground trembled with every step the monster took, but Alcune kept his eyes focused ahead, his wrist scanner guiding him back to the source of the anomaly. The journey back to the ruins was a blur of pain and adrenaline. The electromagnetic energy grew stronger as he neared the stone structure, the symbols glowing brighter now, as if in response to the creature's rampage. Alcune's mind raced as he accessed the controls on his wrist scanner, frantically searching for a way to disrupt the flow of energy. He couldn't fully understand the alien technology that powered the ruins, but he could sense its patterns like a pulse, beating in time with the jungle itself. "There," he muttered to himself, his fingers flying over the controls. "If I can destabilize the core, it might trigger a shutdown." As he approached the central chamber of the ruins, the air around him shimmered with raw energy. The glowing symbols on the stone walls pulsed in rhythm with the creature's distant roars. This was the source, the heart of the anomaly. Alcune's hands trembled as he aimed his scanner at the core, preparing to overload the system. The moment he activated the disruption sequence, the ruins shook violently. The symbols flickered, and the energy field that surrounded the site began to waver. Alcune could feel the air crackling with tension, as if the very fabric of the anomaly was unraveling. He had no idea what would happen when it collapsed, but there was no time to think. The creature's roar echoed through the jungle again, this time louder, more primal. Alcune knew it was reacting to the disruption, sensing that its power source was being tampered with. He had to move fast. "Come on. Come on," he whispered, his voice shaking as he input the final commands into his scanner. With a sudden burst of light, the core pulsed once, twice, and then collapsed in on itself. The energy field shattered, sending shockwaves through the ground. Alcun was thrown backward, tumbling into the dirt as the ruins crumbled around him. The electromagnetic anomaly dissipated, and for a moment, the jungle fell eerily silent. Alcun lay there, gasping for breath, his body aching from the impact. His wrist scanner blinked weakly, its power almost drained, but the readings were clear, the anomaly was gone. The source had been severed. But was it enough? He struggled to his feet, his limbs trembling as he stumbled back toward the cliff. The jungle was still and quiet now, but the tension in the air remained. As he neared the clearing, he saw the humans gathered at the edge of the cliff, their weapons lowered. Mariana stood at the front, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, but her eyes were sharp. The creature was gone. Alcun approached, breathing heavily, and Mariana turned to him. "You did it?" He nodded, still catching his breath. "The anomaly is gone. The energy field. It's been disrupted." Mariana let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since the chase had begun. "Good. Whatever that thing was, it's gone now. It just disappeared when the energy field collapsed." Alcun glanced back toward the ruins, now nothing more than rubble buried in the jungle. The ancient power that had once fueled the century was gone, and with it, the creature that had nearly killed them all. The humans stood in silence for a moment, taking in the enormity of what had just happened. They had faced an ancient, alien force, something beyond even their understanding of Earth's dangers. And they had survived. As the adrenaline began to fade, Alcun's body finally gave in to the strain. He collapsed to his knees, gasping for air, the weight of Earth's gravity pressing down on him once again. Mariana knelt beside him, offering him a canteen of water. "You're lucky to be alive," she said quietly, her voice filled with both relief and exhaustion. Alcun managed a weak smile. "I could say the same about you." She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Welcome to Earth." Alcun took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the jungle around him, the oppressive air, the constant hum of life that thrived in this deadly environment. He had come here to study a Deathworld, a place where everything seemed designed to kill. But now he understood why the humans called it home. Earth was a crucible, a place where life was forged in hardship, where survival was a constant battle. For beings like him, it was a death world, a place of unimaginable danger. But for humans, for this species that had evolved here, it was paradise. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to return to their base, Alcun knew one thing for certain: he had survived Earth. But it had changed him, just as it had shaped the humans over millennia. And though he would eventually leave this world behind, a part of him would always carry the lessons of the death world called Earth.